we have a critical movement. I would say perhaps, in fact, we may brag within the international system. We might be among the top centers dealing with violent extremism and terrorism that has a critical movement.
This is the best thing that we can do as the people that are in the fight against terror, because it is until we are informed that we can be able to know which approaches we are to use.
I don't think the center realizes how big they are. You know, they play in the background too much. But I would want everybody to know there's a center, because now it's like a well-kept secret.
What began as an idea to bring the IGAD countries to the table to discuss how to outsmart the enemy is now a force to reckon with.
IGAD is determined to ride the wind of peace that has been sweeping across our region, and promise to continue working tirelessly to resolve the remaining very important challenges that the region is facing. We cannot be peaceful if all of us are not peaceful.
Well, we are happy that we have been able to bring countries that are not members of IGAD. Tanzania has been on board, Rwanda is on board, Mozambique is on board. As you know, this threat is transnational by nature. The extremists, terrorists don't know boundaries. They move freely, and therefore, even for our operation and our work, we must not create boundaries. We must reach to all like-minded people. We must be guided by the principles of collective action. So the more actors we are able to bring on the table, then the better, so that we are able to share the same. And the threat is real for all of us.
Identifying very critical issues and expanding the knowledge base is very critical, and the center has been excellent, I think, in creating different forums, opportunities for engagement, for collaboration, and on knowledge sharing as well, and experience sharing, because most of the region's problems, they have also commonalities, you know. So it's not only just studying individual countries, but also knowing regional patterns.
The enemy, wreaking havoc, taking away innocent lives, tearing communities apart, bringing to the ground years of developmental efforts and leaving behind terror, agony, and pain. This, the result of terrorism and violent extremism.
Terrorism is the other side of the darker side of this world, which everyone should know about its existence and should also undermine any of activities that may affect a human being directly or indirectly. Anyone who has an agenda to stand any idea with should come in a peace forum and should put it politically open for a dialogue and a negotiation. Otherwise, the whole world should stand against terrorism.
When we map the organizations, one of the aspects of the mapping is we ask them about we do a needs assessment, a capacity needs assessment. So we checked all the needs assessments. So we've been training them based on the capacity needs, the needs that they gave us during the mapping. So for example, one of the main one was strategic communication, which is also a unit in the center.
This war against violent extremism, it has had mixed bags of success and failures. We tend to make 2 steps ahead, then we make almost 5 behind. This war is going to be with us for a long time.
At the end of this dark tunnel lies a ray of light, the IGAD Centre of Excellence for Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism. An African solution to what seemingly appears to be an African problem: terrorism.
This center has been critical in, number one, ensuring there's a common understanding, not just on the research agenda, but on the problem of extremism within the region. it has served to build capacities, both of government institutions dealing with terrorism and violent extremism, as well as local communities and other partners in ensuring this a collaborative approach and a common approach towards dealing with this scourge of terror in all its complexity.
To realize that this experience, it takes a broader side, because it has a lot of discussions, a lot of reflections that I didn't see in the rest of the workshops that I have seen. So at least the interaction help us to get to know the challenge of the region, and also to try to object, contradict, refuse, adjust, talk on what others think as a conflict, as a reason for a challenge for the region or for the nation. So I believe it is such a successful experience.
We have got a number of centers of excellence in the region, but I must say that I think the Center of Excellence on Prevention and Countering Violent Extremism, based in Djibouti under IGAD, has performed tremendously well. You know, we have seen tangible results.
We can all recall the overall goal of this project really is to capacitate Salafi youth leaders, with strategies to be able to safeguard themselves as well as other young people in their communities from joining violent extremism.
Our exposure to the center has helped us develop new ways of engaging on this problem of violent extremism. For example, in eastern Uganda today, when we go to those at-risk communities, it's just not about telling them, okay, you guys, you are targets of recruitment, you are at risk. No, we use different approaches now. We, for example, look into livelihood programs, developing livelihood programs that would make these people earn a living.
Terrorism is a multifaceted challenge. The Centre, through partnerships with state and non-state actors, has managed to break down the problem of violent extremism and make it understandable and manageable to those affected.
Through various forums, I like the fact that the IGAD Centre really brought together civil society actors around the region, not just in Uganda, often in conversation, but also at events with government actors. Some of these government actors, we had never met them physically, but they gave us an opportunity for us to network with them. We would travel with them, on the same plane. We wait in the same lounges. So somehow conversations would come up, and I feel like that, in a way, helped reduce some of the biases that the government institutions have for us.
A civil society, for example, person sitting together with me in uniform and we are speaking the same language. In many cases they say, I have never thought about this. They are like, we people, we believe you see us as enemies. And we also always keep our distance. So when we sit together, and it starts from there, accepting each other. Then after acceptance, you can argue your issues together. Then later agree on common objectives.
The center has been very useful, especially for me. It's that regional perspective, like you get young people from Kilifi, Malindi, and they get to see what people from Eritrea, Djibouti are doing. That is quite useful because then it enriches your knowledge, but also broaden your spectrum. And so I would definitely encourage such exchanges more with state and non-state actors, but if possible, then the center can try to do peer-to-peer learning or cross-border, cross-sharing learning.
What gives me joy is the people who have passed through the center, gone through the training of the center, and that within their small way in their communities, they are able to be champions, and they are able to build capacities of others, so that we have a critical movement of good people that have courage and capacity to undermine extremist ideology.
Every year, the Centre trains approximately 400 people, tailoring the learning needs across key stakeholders such as civil society organizations, youth, women, media practitioners, teachers, government officials, and religious leaders.
For me, I think that was a very great idea, a very noble idea for IGAD to come up with such a center that would bring together experts and also other stakeholders in the field of preventing and countering violent extremism in this region. When you talk about the soft power approach, I think the center is doing very well in that area. Prior to the region embracing the soft power approach, we were looking at this problem as a problem that can be dealt with using the military, and we got it wrong.
How can we prevent the youth, the young people, the women, because everybody's being recruited, and generally even the men, from being recruited into violent extremism? And I think that is the work of religious leaders. And I think once we are trained that we can use the pulpit to send messages of peace, that is the best legacy that IGAD can leave, because they train us to package our messages in such a way that they have a wider reach within the Horn of Africa.
I have been invited in different training sessions, both as a trainer and also as a trainee. What I've always noticed is that people want to impart knowledge. They want to tell you. I think it was different from the IGAD trainings, that it was, can we have a conversation, a candid conversation. The model of training was not the usual, PowerPoint. It was, can we listen from you? What has been your experience?
There are several studies that we do, but the most interesting one is that we do content analysis. We review how terrorism is reported by various media in the Horn of Africa, so that we identify what are the hits and what are the misses. Where are we succeeding and where are we failing? Where are we doing it right and where are we doing it wrong? And so when we notice the gaps, then we train journalists on what we can do to make sure that we hit more and we miss less.
Seeing people coming to a point of creating such impactful messages, coming and observing these principles of effective communication, having a compelling message, because at the end of the day we ask ourselves, why are the extremist narrative getting such a huge audience? Where are we going wrong?
Most of them, because the extremists use online platforms to develop messages, to recruit young people, to recruit women. So that was one of the capacity gaps. So we did trainings in strategic communications, and people have been appreciating. I think there's an organization in Kenya which actually used the capacity they got from the training to actually develop their own videos for at the grassroots level, and for us, which is what is the reason we are doing it.
There's a whole lot to the training on also how to disseminate the content that you get, how to create the content, how to know who is your ally, who is, it was a whole comprehensive. And now, then maybe the outcome had been content, and getting as many young people to participate in content creation and understanding the alternative. But now it's traveling. It's now going, bigger than we had even originally thought. So that's a good, progression that has come in a few years.
Le Centre de l'IGAD, en fait, appuie, instruire, informer, donner une plateforme pour les gens de la région pour pouvoir développer certains aspects, pour pouvoir échanger entre eux, pour pouvoir trouver des solutions entre eux. Et je suis encore épatée qu'aujourd'hui, à ma 4e ou 5e session que j'ai avec ce centre, que j'arrive encore à apprendre sur les développements de la paix à travers la région, à apprendre des jeunes qui viennent de la région au fur et à mesure. Et ce networking aide la jeunesse de la région vraiment à se développer et à maintenir quelque sorte une paix un peu durable.
The Centre boasts of being a one-of-a-kind institution that tackles terrorism and violent extremism from a preventative approach, offering alternative and tangible solutions.
We've seen more resilience in terms of how young people are resisting these narratives, and we've seen reduction in the number of young people that believe in these narratives and those that are joining. In 2016 onwards, that was the peak of recruitment in eastern Uganda. But through our engagements in the region, we've seen a reduction in the number of young people that are taken. That's why the ADF has actually adopted other strategies.
What we get from here, when we go back, we are able to educate the youth, we are able to educate the civil society organizations, to be able to take a stance against radicalization and find preventive measures that works elsewhere, and also, bring it into Somalia.
The IGAD member countries, whenever we discuss issues, usually it's not one country's problem, it's always a shared one. We are very much close.
I want to confess or to admit that who I am in law enforcement, the IGAD has done a very big contribution to me in terms of training. I've been trained in criminal justice system, I've been trained in intelligence, terrorism financing, threat assessment, and violent extremism, prevention of violent extremism, and prevention and countering of violent extremism, strategic communication, which is a very critical component in violent extremism.
Much has been adopted by governments that emerged from the Center of Excellence, whether it's on counter-narratives or the ideological campaigns it's been conducting, or in building certain capacities for communities. And right now, there's a general consensus within the region, not just on the vitality of the center's existence, but on the impact it's actually having in the process of fighting terrorism and the extremist ideologies.
Through engaging workshops and trainings, the IGAD Centre of Excellence for Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism has succeeded in being the only centre in Africa that has engaged and challenged extremist ideologies through strategic communication.
We've used the knowledge, especially in terms of counter-narratives and strategic communication, to reach out to audiences that are susceptible to these narratives that are driven by extremist groups. For example, in Eastern Uganda, in Bujiri, we have been using the skills and knowledge that we gained from the center to demystify some of the narratives that are propagated by the ADF when it's recruiting, especially from the Salaf Muslim minority.
We have been able, through our digital hub, to have this great network and to have these conversations that are ongoing, that we have been able to have this agenda that is now being pushed, that people have made commitment. And what we are seeing is that we are even seeing our participants that we have trained coming up and doing these media spaces, which we know are going to be sustained. I now have a group that the youth and the civil society that are going to host a very huge media space.
Every day, messaging by extremists evolves, a factor the centre is well aware of.
I like the way we are taking a holistic approach, where, for example, these guys who are working on strategic communication, for instance, for PCVE, but then we have other guys who simplify that to say something specific like social media, and just analyzing what new narratives are coming up or what recruiting avenues are coming up.
We have to demystify that CVE is not for specific people and in specific places.
Please be sure of the news you share. Please be sure of the people you follow. Please be sure of the veracity of whatever is going on internet.
Across the region, you find that there are a lot of conflicts that happen, and these conflicts either are further exacerbated by what is happening online, or at times also fueled by what is happening online.
Everyone has a role in preventing violence extremism, from that Shamba man at home, from the maid at home, from the children at home, to the religious leaders. Everyone plays a role in preventing violence.
The IGAD Centre of Excellence for Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism is not just a centre, but a symbol of hope.
Our impact is very widespread, I would say. It's not only on policy level, but also in knowledge, also sharing, and many other areas as well. So I'm sure in the long run, policymakers would have to take into account the work of the center as evidence in terms of their policy interventions.
I encourage the center and whoever is behind the center to please, let me repeat again, please, don't stop it.
I think where we see is where we see we will have a critical movement that will be in every country, a very vibrant movement that wherever you turn, people will be talking about what they are doing to prevent and counter violent extremism.
We, the religious leaders from the IGAD region, want to tell the world that violent extremism and terrorism knows no religion.
A catalyst of change and a testament to the power of collaboration.